Hello again, this is Dr. Reginald Yawnsworth, and tonight we're reluctantly examining one of history's most luminous and contradictory epochs, the age of Classical Antiquity and the flowering of civilizations that would define the very notion of what it means to be human, a story of philosophical revolution, artistic perfection, and the birth of ideals that still haunt our modern world with their impossible beauty. We're traveling back 2.5 millennia to a time when marble gleamed white in Mediterranean sunlight, when the greatest minds in history gathered in porticoed academies, and when democracy and empire danced their eternal, tragic waltz. So settle in, perhaps adjust those pillows, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Are you in Athens, where the Parthenon still crowns the Acropolis like a crown of mathematical perfection? Or perhaps in Rome, where the Forum's broken columns remember speeches that once moved the world? Wherever you are, dim those lights and let's drift back to around 500 BCE to witness the birth of Western civilization's most enduring dreams and nightmares. Tonight's story isn't just about glory, though there's certainly that. It's about the paradox of societies that invented democracy while maintaining slavery, that created timeless art while waging endless wars, that gave birth to philosophy while practicing the most sophisticated forms of political manipulation the world had yet seen. It's about Socrates drinking hemlock for asking too many questions, about Caesar crossing the Rubicon with a handful of words, and about how the same culture that gave us the golden rule also perfected the art of crucifixion. This is the story of humanity's greatest experiment with reason and beauty, marked by achievements so profound that we still measure ourselves against them, and failures so spectacular that they echo through every subsequent attempt at civilization. It's about the moment when our ancestors discovered that human potential might be limitless and the terrible price they paid for that knowledge. Chapter 1. Dawn of the Golden Age. Welcome to Classical Antiquity, roughly 800 BCE to 600 CE, when humanity achieved unprecedented heights of art, philosophy, and civilization, while simultaneously perfecting the art of making life unbearable for 99% of the population. Congratulations, you've just woken up in Rome around 100 CE, and you're about to discover that the glory of the ancient world was built on a foundation of slavery, disease, and human misery so profound it makes previous eras look like practice runs. Your bed is a straw mattress on a wooden frame, which sounds luxurious, until you realize the straw is home to an entire civilization of bedbugs, fleas, and lice that have established a thriving metropolis in your sleeping arrangements. The mattress smells like a combination of mildew, human sweat, and whatever died in there last month. There's a pillow stuffed with feathers that might have come from birds, but probably came from whatever was handy when someone needed stuffing material. You wake to the sound of the city stirring, merchants hawking their wares, cartwheels grinding on stone, and the distant roar of the Colosseum where people are about to die for entertainment. The air is thick with smoke from thousands of cooking fires, the smell of human waste from the streets, and the general aroma of a civilization that's figured out how to build magnificent buildings, but not how to make them smell good. Your apartment is a multi-story tenement called an insula, which is basically an ancient death trap designed by someone who clearly hated both architecture and human safety. The building is made of wood and brick, held together by hope and whatever adhesive was cheapest. The upper floors sway in the wind, the stairs are death traps waiting to happen, and the whole structure is one small fire away from becoming a spectacular inferno. You share your living space with multiple families because privacy is a luxury for rich people, and even they don't have much of it. The walls are thin enough that you know intimate details about your neighbors' lives, including their digestive schedules, marital problems, and what they had for dinner 3 days ago. Sound insulation is a concept that won't be invented for another millennium. The floor is wooden planks over whatever's underneath. Could be another apartment, could be a shop, could be a latrine. The gaps between boards allow smells, sounds, and occasionally small objects to filter through from other floors. Walking around requires careful attention to avoid stepping on things that fell through from upstairs. Your window, if you have one, is an opening in the wall covered with wooden shutters. Glass windows exist, but are expensive luxuries. The opening lets in light, air, and whatever the people upstairs are throwing out. The view is probably of another building exactly like yours, filled with people living in identical misery. Getting up requires courage because the morning air is either freezing cold or stifling hot, depending on the season. There's no central heating, no air conditioning, and no effective way to control temperature. You're completely at the mercy of weather and the whims of the gods, who seem to have a personal vendetta against human comfort. The good news, you're living in the most advanced civilization in human history. The bad news, that's not saying much. Chapter 2, The Roman Bathroom Experience. Time for your morning constitutional, and Roman sanitation is famous for being advanced, which is true if your point of comparison is defecating in a hole in the ground. The Romans have invented sophisticated sewage systems, public toilets and running water, but they've also managed to make using the bathroom a social experience that combines public humiliation with significant health risks. Your toilet is a marble bench with holes cut in it, positioned over a channel of running water that carries waste away from the city. This sounds civilized until you realize that the bench seats about 20 people at once, with no privacy dividers, no toilet paper, and no personal space. Going to the bathroom is a communal activity where business deals are made, gossip is shared, and diseases are transmitted while everyone sits hip to hip conducting their most private business in public. The running water underneath is the same water that flows to the next toilet down the line, which means you're literally sharing wastewater with everyone upstream. The system works on the principle that moving water is clean water, which is only true if you ignore the fact that it's moving human waste from one place to another. Toilet paper doesn't exist, so you're working with a sponge on a stick called a tersorium. The sponge is shared between users and cleaned by rinsing it in a bucket of salt water or vinegar. Yes, you're sharing ass-wiping equipment with strangers, and the cleaning process involves swishing it around in a bucket that's been used by everyone who came before you. The wealthy have private latrines in their homes, but these are still connected to the same sewage system. Rich people get to conduct their business in private, but they're still using shared sponges and contributing to the same waste stream that flows under the public toilets. Roman sewers are engineering marvels that efficiently transport waste away from populated areas. The Cloaca Maxima is a massive underground system that carries sewage, rainwater, and general urban runoff to the Tiber River. This keeps the streets cleaner but turns the river into an open sewer that people downstream have to deal with. Disease spreads rapidly through the shared toilet facilities. Intestinal parasites, dysentery, and various bacterial infections thrive in conditions where people share seating surfaces and cleaning implements. The Romans understand that sanitation is important for health, but they don't understand disease transmission well enough to prevent cross-contamination. Public urinals are located throughout the city, and urine is actually valuable because it's used for cleaning clothes and tanning leather. Urine collectors gather pee for commercial use, creating an economy based on bodily waste. The Romans have figured out how to monetize excretion, which is either brilliant or disturbing depending on your perspective. Bathhouses serve as combination social clubs and hygiene facilities, but they're also breeding grounds for skin diseases and infections. The same water is used by dozens of people, and the concept of chlorination is still 1,500 years away. Bathhouses are relaxing and social, but they're also excellent places to pick up communicable diseases. If you're poor, you might not have access to formal toilet facilities at all. Chamber pots are emptied into the streets, and waste disposal involves out windows with a warning shout of "Gardez-le!" The streets are open sewers, and walking around the city requires constant attention to avoid stepping in human waste. The Romans have made significant advances in sanitation and public health, but they've also created new and interesting ways to share diseases and make personal hygiene a public spectacle. It's progress, but it's progress that comes with a very specific set of social and health challenges. Chapter 3. Time for the most important meal of the day, which in classical antiquity is whatever doesn't kill you immediately while providing enough energy to work until sunset. The Romans have made significant advances in cuisine and food production, but food safety is still a creative interpretation of hope for the best and pray to the gods. Your breakfast consists of bread, which is now available from professional bakers who've figured out how to make it lighter and more palatable than previous eras. This sounds great until you realize that Roman bread is often adulterated with chalk, clay, or ground-up bones to increase volume and profit margins. Bakers are notorious for cheating customers, and there are laws against bread adulteration that exist mainly because the practice is so common. The bread is made from wheat flour that's been ground on stone mills, so every loaf contains enough grit to sand down your teeth over time. The grinding stones wear down during use, adding rock dust to your daily diet. Professional bakers have better equipment, but they're still working with stone-ground flour that's basically edible sandpaper. Your drink is posca, a mixture of wine and vinegar that's diluted with water. This is the common person's beverage because pure wine is expensive and pure water is dangerous. Posca kills some bacteria and provides minimal nutrition, but it tastes like someone mixed grape juice with cleaning supplies. Children drink it, soldiers drink it, and everyone pretends it's acceptable. If you're wealthy, you might have access to fresh fruit, eggs, and honey. Oranges and lemons are luxury imports from distant lands. Eggs are available from chickens, ducks, and other birds, but they're often partially developed or contaminated with salmonella. Honey is the only sweetener available, and it's expensive enough that most people never taste anything truly sweet. Olive oil is the primary cooking fat and is used for everything from food preparation to lamp fuel. The quality varies dramatically. The wealthy get pressed virgin olive oil, while the poor get whatever's left after the good stuff is extracted. Lower quality olive oil is often rancid, mixed with other oils, or adulterated with cheaper substances. Meat is available but expensive and often questionable. Pork, beef, and lamb are luxury items that spoil quickly without refrigeration. Sausages are made from whatever meat scraps are available, mixed with spices to mask the taste of decay. Garum, a fermented fish sauce, is used to flavor food and is basically ancient ketchup made from rotting fish. Dairy products are risky propositions. Fresh milk spoils within hours, cheese develops dangerous molds, and butter goes rancid quickly. Most dairy is consumed fermented or aged, which kills some bacteria but creates opportunities for new forms of food poisoning. Quality control is a matter of luck and experience. Vegetables are grown in soil fertilized with human waste, so every carrot comes preloaded with intestinal parasites. Leafy greens are essentially salad bars for every parasite in the area. Root vegetables are safer because they're usually cooked, but anything eaten raw is a gamble with your digestive system. Food preservation involves salting, smoking, drying, or fermentation, all of which can go wrong in spectacular ways. Improperly preserved meat develops botulism, fermented foods can become toxic, and salt-preserved foods can be oversalted to the point of inedibility. Food preservation is an art form that kills people when practiced incorrectly. Cooking is done over open flames in clay pots and bronze vessels. Temperature control is a matter of experience and guesswork. Food is often burned on the outside and raw on the inside, or overcooked until it's inedible. Proper cooking is whatever doesn't cause immediate illness. Food poisoning is a regular occurrence that people plan for rather than try to prevent. Stomach problems, digestive issues, and food-related illnesses are just part of the dining experience. Most people spend at least part of each week dealing with food-related health problems. The wealthy have access to exotic spices, imported foods, and professional cooks, but they're still vulnerable to the same basic problems of food safety in an era without refrigeration or quality control. Rich people just have more variety in their suffering and can afford to discard questionable food. Chapter 4. Classical Fashion and Personal Hygiene. Time to get dressed in your classical antiquity wardrobe, which has evolved from previous eras but still manages to be uncomfortable, impractical, and potentially lethal. Fashion in the ancient world is about displaying social status while dealing with fabrics that are scratchy, dyes that are toxic, and clothing that's designed more for appearance than comfort. Your basic outfit is a tunic made from linen or wool, which sounds civilized until you realize that linen is rough and scratchy when new, and wool is itchy and smells like the sheep it came from. The fabric is woven on looms by people who learned the craft through trial and error, resulting in cloth that's uneven, coarse, and prone to shrinking when wet. Togas are the formal wear of Roman citizens, and they're basically large sheets of wool that require another person to help you put on correctly. Wearing a toga is like being wrapped in a heavy, itchy blanket that's designed to fall off if you move too quickly. The toga is a symbol of citizenship and social status, but it's also impractical for any actual activity. Dyes are made from crushed insects, rotting plants, and mineral deposits that often contain toxic metals. Purple dye comes from murex shells and is so expensive that only the wealthy can afford it. Other colors fade quickly, run when wet, and sometimes cause skin reactions. The most beautiful clothes are often the most dangerous to wear. Undergarments are minimal and optional. Romans wear loincloths and breastbands, but these are made from the same rough materials as outer clothing. The concept of comfortable undergarments is limited to whatever doesn't chafe too badly during normal activities. Footwear ranges from sandals to boots, depending on your social class and occupation. Sandals are made from leather that's often poorly tanned and offer minimal protection from the elements. Boots are available for soldiers and outdoor workers, but they're heavy, uncomfortable, and prone to causing foot problems. Jewelry is made from gold, silver, bronze, and precious stones, but it's also heavy, uncomfortable, and a target for thieves. Wealthy people wear elaborate jewelry to display their status, but they also have to worry about the weight, the security, and the social implications of their accessories. Personal hygiene involves regular visits to public bathhouses, which are combination social clubs and disease transmission centers. The same water is used by dozens of people, and the concept of individual bathing is rare. Bathhouses are relaxing and social, but they're also excellent places to pick up skin diseases and infections. Soap exists but is expensive and harsh. Most people clean themselves with olive oil and a scraping tool called a strigil. This removes dirt and dead skin, but also removes protective oils and can cause irritation. The wealthy have access to perfumed oils and better cleaning supplies, but even they're dealing with primitive hygiene products. Hair care involves elaborate styles for the wealthy and practical cuts for everyone else. Hair is washed with various concoctions that may or may not be effective. Elaborate hairstyles require professional stylists and significant time to maintain. Hair dyes are available but often contain toxic substances that can cause hair loss or chemical burns. Makeup is made from lead, mercury, and other toxic substances that provide desired cosmetic effects while slowly poisoning the wearer. White lead powder creates a pale complexion that's fashionable but deadly. Coal around the eyes contains antimony and other chemicals that can cause eye problems and systemic poisoning. Laundry is a major production that involves hauling water, making soap from animal fat and ashes, and scrubbing clothes by hand. Professional launderers use urine as a cleaning agent, which is effective, but results in clothes that smell like ammonia. Clean clothes are expensive and time-consuming to maintain. The wealthy have access to better fabrics, professional tailors, and more variety in their wardrobes, but they're still dealing with the same basic problems of uncomfortable materials, toxic dyes, and primitive hygiene products. Fashion is a way to display status, but it's also a way to suffer in style. Chapter 5. Dental Care in the Golden Age. Time to flash that classical antiquity smile, which is actually not as horrifying as previous eras because the Romans have made some genuine advances in dental care. This doesn't mean your mouth is a pleasant place, just that it's a more organized disaster with slightly better management techniques. Dental hygiene has improved significantly from earlier periods. Romans understand that oral health is connected to overall health, and they've developed primitive but effective dental care techniques. Some people use toothpicks made from wood or metal to clean between teeth, and tooth powder made from crushed bones, shells, or pumice stone to clean tooth surfaces. Toothbrushes don't exist, but Romans use frayed twigs, rough cloth, or their fingers to clean teeth. Tooth powder is abrasive and removes plaque, but it also removes tooth enamel over time. The wealthy might use milder abrasives or imported cleaning materials, but everyone's dealing with the same basic problem of cleaning teeth without modern tools. Roman dentistry is surprisingly advanced for its time. Dental practitioners can extract teeth, drill cavities, and even perform primitive root canals. They use bronze and iron tools that are crude but effective. Pain management involves alcohol, opium if available, and biting on leather straps during procedures. Tooth extraction is performed by specialists who understand basic anatomy and have experience with the procedure. They use forceps, elevators, and other tools to remove problematic teeth. The success rate is much higher than previous eras, but infection is still a major risk due to poor sterilization techniques. Dental prosthetics exist in primitive forms. False teeth are made from ivory, bone, or other people's teeth. These prosthetics are held in place with gold wire or other materials. They're uncomfortable and ineffective, but they're better than having no teeth at all. Only the wealthy can afford dental prosthetics. Tooth decay is still common due to diet and lack of effective prevention. Roman bread contains sugar and starch that promote bacterial growth. Wine and sweetened foods available to the wealthy contribute to dental problems. Poor people have fewer sweet foods but more abrasive diets that wear down teeth mechanically. Gum disease is widespread and often leads to tooth loss. Romans understand that bleeding gums are a sign of problems, and they use various herbal remedies to treat gum inflammation. Some of these treatments are actually effective, while others are based on superstition and tradition. Bad breath is addressed through various means, including chewing herbs, rinsing with wine or vinegar, and using breath-freshening preparations. The wealthy have access to imported spices and perfumed mouth rinses. These treatments mask odors but don't address underlying dental problems. Dental pain is treated with herbal remedies, alcohol, and prayer. Some herbal treatments contain compounds that actually provide pain relief, while others are based on folk beliefs and tradition. Severe dental pain often leads to tooth extraction, which is safer than leaving infected teeth in place. Professional dental care is available in larger cities, but it's expensive and not always effective. Dental practitioners range from skilled specialists to opportunistic charlatans. The quality of care depends on the practitioner's experience and the patient's ability to pay for better treatment. Children's dental care is limited but exists. Parents understand that children's teeth are important for their future health and appearance. Some families invest in dental care for their children, while others accept that dental problems are inevitable and focus on managing pain and dysfunction. Social attitudes toward dental health vary by class and region. The wealthy view good teeth as a sign of health and social status. Poor people accept dental problems as inevitable, but still value effective teeth for eating and speaking. Dental health is understood to be important, but treatment options are limited. Chapter 6. Working in the Glory of Rome. Time to contribute to the greatest civilization in human history, which means working in conditions that would violate every modern labor law while producing the marble monuments and literary masterpieces that make classical antiquity look so impressive from a distance. Your job is to build glory for the empire while hoping you don't die in the process. If you're a free citizen, you might work as a craftsman, merchant, or professional. These jobs are better than slavery, but still involve long hours, dangerous conditions, and minimal pay. Craftsmen work with tools and materials that are improvements over previous eras, but still primitive by modern standards. Workplace safety is your own responsibility, and accidents are just part of the job. If you're a slave, which is statistically likely since about 30% of the population is enslaved, your job is to do whatever your owner tells you to do without complaint, pay, or hope of improvement. Slavery is the foundation of the Roman economy, and slaves work in every industry from agriculture to construction to domestic service. Your property, not a person, and your life has no value beyond your economic productivity. Construction workers build the magnificent temples, aqueducts, and public buildings that make Rome famous. This involves moving massive stone blocks with primitive machinery, working at dangerous heights without safety equipment, and handling materials that can crush or maim. Workers die regularly from falls, accidents, and injuries, but there's always a supply of new workers to replace them. Miners extract the metals and materials that power the Roman economy. Mining is a death sentence carried out slowly through cave-ins, toxic gas exposure, and lung diseases from breathing stone dust. Most miners are slaves or criminals, and they're worked until they die. The average life expectancy for a miner is measured in months, not years. Farmers work the land that feeds the empire using improved tools and techniques, but still dealing with the same basic challenges of weather, pests, and soil depletion. Agricultural slavery is common, and farm workers are often prisoners of war or people who've been enslaved for debt. The work is backbreaking and the pay is minimal. Gladiators are professional entertainers who fight to the death for public amusement. This sounds exciting until you realize that gladiators are mostly slaves or criminals who've been forced into the arena. Training is brutal, the mortality rate is high, and survival depends on pleasing crowds who want to see blood. Even successful gladiators rarely live long enough to enjoy their fame. Merchants and traders travel dangerous routes to import goods from across the known world. This involves crossing seas in ships that regularly sink, traveling roads that are infested with bandits, and dealing with foreign populations that may be hostile. The profits can be enormous, but so are the risks. Women work in domestic service, textile production, and other jobs that are considered appropriate for their gender. Women's work is undervalued and underpaid, but it's essential for the functioning of society. Women also work as prostitutes, which is legal but dangerous and socially stigmatized. Children start working at young ages in family businesses or as apprentices. There's no child labor protection, no mandatory education, and no concept of childhood as a protected period. Children work in dangerous conditions and are often injured or killed in workplace accidents. Military service is mandatory for citizens and involves fighting in campaigns across the empire. Soldiers face death in battle, disease in military camps, and the long-term effects of trauma and injury. Military service can lead to social advancement, but it can also lead to death in foreign lands far from home. The workday is long and brutal, with no concept of work-life balance. There are no weekends, no vacation time, and no sick leave. Workers labor from dawn to dusk, and the pace is determined by supervisors who care more about productivity than worker welfare. Pay is minimal and often delayed. Workers are paid in food, shelter, and small amounts of money that barely cover basic survival needs. There are no benefits, no retirement plans, and no safety net for workers who become injured or too old to work. Working conditions are dangerous and unregulated. There are no safety standards, no protective equipment, and no compensation for workplace injuries. Workers are expected to accept risk as part of their jobs, and employers have no responsibility for worker safety or welfare. Chapter 7. Weather and Climate in the Classical World. Let's discuss climate control in classical antiquity, which has improved significantly from previous eras, but still leaves you completely vulnerable to weather patterns that seem designed by meteorological sadists with advanced degrees in human suffering and a sophisticated understanding of how to make people miserable. Winter in the Mediterranean isn't as brutal as northern climates, but your housing still provides minimal protection from cold and dampness. Roman buildings are constructed with stone and concrete, which are durable but terrible insulators. Heat comes from braziers burning charcoal or wood, which fill rooms with smoke and carbon monoxide. The wealthy have hypocaust systems that circulate hot air under floors, but these are expensive and rare. The cold penetrates stone walls and rises from stone floors. Your breath creates clouds of vapor that condense on walls and surfaces. Heating is expensive, so people ration warmth and huddle together for body heat. Frostbite is less common than in northern climates, but hypothermia is still a risk during cold snaps. Fuel is expensive and sometimes scarce. Wood has to be transported from forests that are increasingly distant as local resources are depleted. Charcoal is more efficient, but costs more. The wealthy can afford to heat their homes adequately, while the poor choose between warmth and food. Public bathhouses provide warm spaces for socializing and temporary relief from cold. Summer brings intense heat that turns stone buildings into ovens. Mediterranean summers are hot and dry, with temperatures that make outdoor work dangerous. There's no air conditioning, no fans, and limited effective ventilation. Stone buildings absorb heat during the day and radiate it back at night, making sleep difficult. The wealthy have access to cool mountain retreats and can afford to escape the worst heat. The poor are trapped in urban areas where stone streets and buildings create heat islands that are even hotter than the surrounding countryside. Workers continue to labor in dangerous heat because stopping work means starvation. Summer also brings drought and water shortages. Aqueducts provide water to cities, but rural areas may face severe shortages. Crop failures due to drought can cause famine and social unrest. The wealthy have access to stored water and can afford to buy food during shortages, while the poor face dehydration and starvation. Seasonal flooding affects river valleys and coastal areas. The Nile floods are predictable and beneficial for agriculture, but other rivers flood unpredictably and cause destruction. Floodwaters carry sewage, animal waste, and decomposing matter that spread disease. Urban areas with poor drainage become swamps that breed mosquitoes and waterborne illnesses. Spring and fall bring mild temperatures but also unpredictable weather. Sudden storms can destroy crops, sink ships, and kill people caught in the open. Mediterranean weather can change quickly from pleasant to dangerous, and there's no weather prediction beyond folklore and superstition. Wind patterns affect trade and travel. The sailing season is limited by predictable wind patterns, and ships are often trapped in ports by adverse winds. Merchants plan their trade routes around seasonal weather patterns, but storms can still destroy ships and cargo. Regional climate variations mean that different parts of the empire face different challenges. Northern provinces deal with harsh winters and short growing seasons, while southern regions face extreme heat and drought. The empire's size means that weather disasters in one region may not affect others, but local populations have no external support during climate emergencies. Natural disasters, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, severe storms, can destroy entire cities and kill thousands. Mount Vesuvius destroys Pompeii and Herculaneum, preserving them for future archaeologists, but killing everyone who lived there. There's no warning system, no emergency response, and no disaster relief. Climate affects public health through its impact on disease transmission. Hot weather encourages the spread of bacterial infections, while cold weather weakens immune systems. Seasonal disease patterns are recognized but not understood, and there's no effective prevention beyond hoping for favorable weather. The wealthy can mitigate some weather-related problems through better housing, stored food, and the ability to travel to more favorable climates. The poor are completely vulnerable to weather extremes and have no resources to cope with climate-related disasters. Chapter 8. Water Systems and Sanitation. Time to appreciate Roman engineering at its finest, which has revolutionized water supply and waste management while still managing to make drinking water a game of intestinal roulette and personal hygiene, a social activity with significant health risks. Roman aqueducts are genuine marvels of engineering that transport fresh water from mountain springs to cities dozens of miles away. These massive stone structures use gravity to move millions of gallons of water daily, providing cities with reliable water supplies that are the envy of the ancient world. The water is generally clean and safe, which is a massive improvement over previous eras. But the distribution system within cities is where things get interesting. Water flows from aqueducts to public fountains, bathhouses, and private homes for those who can afford connections. The pipes are made from lead, which slowly poisons users with heavy metal toxicity. The Romans know that lead pipes cause health problems, but they use them anyway because they're durable and easy to work with. Public fountains provide free water to all citizens, but they're also gathering places where diseases spread through crowded conditions and shared drinking vessels. The water is fresh from the aqueducts, but it becomes contaminated through contact with people, animals, and urban pollution. Drinking from public fountains is safer than many alternatives, but it's still a health risk. Private water connections are available to wealthy households, but they're expensive and heavily regulated. The size of your pipe determines how much water you can draw, and there are complex laws governing water rights and usage. Water theft is common and severely punished because water is valuable and tempting to steal. The sewer system is the other half of Roman sanitation engineering. The Cloaca Maxima and other sewers efficiently transport wastewater and human waste away from populated areas. This keeps cities cleaner and reduces disease transmission, but it also concentrates waste in downstream areas and turns rivers into open sewers. Bathhouses are social and recreational centers that also serve hygiene functions. The same water is used by dozens of people, and the concept of individual bathing is rare. Bathhouses are heated and comfortable, but they're also excellent places to pick up skin diseases, eye infections, and other communicable conditions. Latrines are public toilets that use running water to carry waste away. They're clean and efficient compared to previous methods, but they're also social spaces where people conduct business while conducting business. The lack of privacy and the shared seating surfaces make disease transmission inevitable. Water quality varies significantly depending on the source and distribution method. Aqueduct water is generally good, but it can be contaminated by animal waste, dead animals, or human interference. Cistern water is stored rainwater that can become stagnant and breed bacteria. Well water is available but often contaminated by sewage seepage. Industrial uses of water include tanning, dyeing, and metalworking, all of which produce toxic waste that contaminates water supplies. There's no concept of environmental protection, and industrial waste is discharged directly into rivers and streams. Downstream communities deal with the pollution created by upstream industries. Personal hygiene involves regular bathing, but the methods available can be as dangerous as they are beneficial. Soap is harsh and expensive, so people use olive oil and scraping tools to clean themselves. This removes dirt, but also removes protective skin oils and can cause irritation and infection. Rural areas have access to natural water sources but limited distribution systems. Farmers and rural populations depend on wells, springs, and rivers that may be contaminated by agricultural runoff or animal waste. Water quality in rural areas is inconsistent and often dangerous. Military camps have portable water systems and field sanitation, but they're still vulnerable to contamination and disease. Army engineers are skilled at finding and protecting water sources, but military populations are concentrated and vulnerable to waterborne epidemics. The wealthy have access to the best water systems, private bathhouses, and water storage facilities. They can afford to boil water, add wine or vinegar for safety, and maintain private sanitation facilities, but even wealthy people are vulnerable to system failures and contamination. Waterborne diseases are still major killers despite improved systems. Cholera, dysentery, and typhoid spread through contaminated water and poor sanitation. The Roman water system is a major advance, but it's not enough to eliminate waterborne disease entirely. Chapter 9. Classical Medicine and Healthcare. Welcome to Roman medicine, where healthcare has evolved from pray to the gods and hope for the best to a sophisticated system of theoretical knowledge, practical techniques, and philosophical approaches to healing that actually work sometimes, which is a significant improvement over previous eras. Medical knowledge is based on Greek theories, particularly the four humours system developed by Hippocrates and refined by Galen. This theory holds that health depends on the balance of blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. While this is fundamentally wrong, it provides a systematic approach to diagnosis and treatment that's more organized than previous methods. Roman physicians are well-trained professionals who study anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology. They understand human anatomy better than previous civilizations, thanks to dissection of animals and observation of human injuries. Medical education is formal and comprehensive, producing doctors who actually know something about the human body. Diagnosis involves careful observation of symptoms, examination of patients, and consideration of lifestyle factors. Roman doctors understand that environment, diet, and behavior affect health. They take detailed medical histories and examine patients systematically. Their diagnostic techniques are primitive but logical and often effective. Treatment options are varied and sometimes effective. Herbal medicines include compounds that actually work: willow bark for pain, digitalis for heart problems, and various plants with genuine pharmaceutical properties. Surgery is performed with steel instruments that are sharp and durable. Surgical techniques are sophisticated for the time period. Pain management includes alcohol, opium, and herbal preparations that provide genuine relief. Roman physicians understand that pain is a medical problem that requires treatment, not just something patients should endure. Pain medication is expensive and sometimes dangerous, but it's available for those who can afford it. Surgical procedures include cataract removal, bone setting, amputation, and even brain surgery. Roman surgeons understand basic anatomy and surgical principles. They use techniques that are crude but effective, and their success rates are surprisingly high for the time period. Infection is still a major risk, but surgical outcomes are much better than previous eras. Dental care is available from specialists who can extract teeth, treat abscesses, and even perform primitive root canals. Dental prosthetics are made from ivory, bone, or other materials. Dental care is expensive but effective, and wealthy Romans have access to dental treatment that's remarkably advanced. Obstetrics and gynecology are medical specialties with trained practitioners. Childbirth is still dangerous, but skilled midwives and physicians can handle complications and reduce mortality rates. Caesarean sections are performed, although they're usually fatal to the mother. Women's health is taken seriously as a medical specialty. Mental health treatment includes both psychological and physical approaches. Roman physicians understand that mental illness is a medical condition, not just demonic possession. They use talk therapy, environmental changes, and medication to treat mental health problems. Treatment is primitive but humane and sometimes effective. Public health measures include quarantine for infectious diseases, regulation of food and water quality, and urban planning that considers health impacts. Romans understand that disease can spread through populations and that prevention is better than treatment. Public health is a government responsibility, not just individual concern. Medical practice is regulated and professional. Physicians must demonstrate competence and maintain professional standards. Medical ethics are codified in the Hippocratic Oath, which establishes principles of patient care and professional responsibility. Medical practice is a respected profession with established standards. Hospitals and medical facilities provide organized healthcare services. Military hospitals treat wounded soldiers, while civilian hospitals care for the general population. Medical facilities are clean, well-organized, and staffed by trained professionals. Healthcare is available to those who can afford it, and some public health services are available to all citizens. Preventive medicine includes dietary advice, exercise recommendations, and lifestyle counseling. Roman physicians understand that prevention is better than treatment, and that healthy living can prevent many diseases. Preventive care is available to wealthy patients who can afford ongoing medical attention. Medical research is conducted through observation, experimentation, and documentation. Roman physicians keep detailed records of treatments and outcomes, allowing medical knowledge to advance through systematic study. Medical knowledge is shared through professional networks and written texts. The wealthy have access to the best medical care available, including private physicians, expensive treatments, and comfortable medical facilities. The poor rely on public health services, folk remedies, and cheaper treatments. Medical care is better than previous eras, but it's still limited by social class and economic resources. Chapter 10: Classical Cuisine and Food Safety. Welcome to Roman dining, where culinary arts have reached unprecedented heights of sophistication and complexity, while food safety remains a creative interpretation of hope. The exotic ingredients don't kill you before you can enjoy their flavors. Roman cuisine is incredibly diverse thanks to trade networks that bring ingredients from across the known world. Spices from India, silk root seasonings, African fruits, and Germanic preserved meats create a culinary palette that's unmatched in human history. This sounds wonderful until you realize that every exotic ingredient is also an exotic opportunity for food poisoning, parasites, and toxic reactions. Professional cooks and elaborate kitchens have revolutionized food preparation. Wealthy households employ skilled chefs who create complex dishes with multiple courses, sophisticated sauces, and artistic presentation. Public restaurants and taverns serve prepared food to urban populations. This is a massive improvement over everyone cooking their own meals over open fires. But the complexity creates new risks. Multi-course meals with various ingredients increase the chances that something will be contaminated, spoiled, or improperly prepared. Elaborate sauces can mask the taste of spoiled ingredients. Professional kitchens may be more skilled, but they're also preparing food for larger numbers of people, meaning that contamination can affect more victims. Food preservation has advanced significantly. Salt curing, smoking, fermentation, and oil preservation allow food to be stored for months and transported over long distances. This creates year-round access to a variety of foods and enables trade in luxury ingredients. However, preservation techniques can fail, and improperly preserved food can be deadly. Garum, the fermented fish sauce that Romans put on everything, is made by leaving fish guts in the sun for several months until they rot into a liquid. This process creates a flavorful condiment that's high in protein and adds taste to bland foods. It also creates opportunities for botulism, bacterial contamination, and various forms of food poisoning. Bread has improved dramatically with professional bakers who understand fermentation and have better ovens. Roman bread is lighter, more digestible, and more flavorful than previous eras. However, bakers often adulterate flour with chalk, clay, or other substances to increase profits. Government regulations exist to prevent this, but enforcement is inconsistent. Wine production is sophisticated and regulated, with different regions producing distinctive varieties. Wine is safer than water and provides calories and nutrients. However, wine is often adulterated with lead compounds to improve taste and preservation. Lead poisoning from wine consumption is a significant health problem, particularly among the wealthy who can afford to drink more wine. Meat quality varies dramatically depending on source and preparation. Fresh meat is available in urban markets, but it spoils quickly in Mediterranean heat. Preserved meats last longer, but may be over-salted or improperly cured. Sausages and processed meats are convenient, but often made from questionable ingredients and scraps. Dairy products are available, but risky. Fresh milk spoils within hours. Cheese can develop dangerous molds, and butter becomes rancid quickly. Fermented dairy products like aged cheese are safer, but can still harbor harmful bacteria. The wealthy have access to fresh dairy from private herds, while the poor rely on whatever's available in markets. Fruits and vegetables are grown with human waste as fertilizer, ensuring that every apple comes preloaded with intestinal parasites. Imported fruits may be partially spoiled from long transport times. Vegetables are often eaten raw, providing no protection from bacterial contamination. Salads are essentially Russian roulette with garnish. Seafood is abundant in coastal areas but dangerous without proper preservation. Fresh fish spoils rapidly, and there's no refrigeration during transport. Shellfish can carry toxins and parasites. Fish sauce and preserved seafood provide protein but also provide opportunities for food poisoning. Food adulteration is common and creative. Olive oil is mixed with cheaper oils, wine is watered down or enhanced with various additives, and spices are cut with sawdust or other fillers. There are laws against food adulteration, but enforcement is difficult and penalties are often insufficient to deter fraud. Cooking techniques have advanced with better stoves, improved cookware, and more sophisticated temperature control. Professional kitchens have elaborate equipment for roasting, boiling, and baking. However, food safety depends on the skill and honesty of cooks who may not understand bacterial contamination or proper food handling. Dining customs involve sharing food from common dishes, which spreads diseases and contamination. Personal hygiene before meals is minimal, and there's no understanding of bacterial transmission. Elaborate banquets with multiple courses and many guests are excellent opportunities for foodborne illness outbreaks. Food poisoning is common and accepted as part of dining. Wealthy Romans employ food tasters to test for poison, but they're less concerned about bacterial contamination. Stomach problems after meals are normal, and people accept digestive distress as the price of enjoying food. Social class determines food quality and safety. The wealthy can afford fresh ingredients, skilled cooks, and the luxury of discarding questionable food. The poor eat whatever they can afford, including food that's obviously spoiled or contaminated. Food safety is a luxury that correlates directly with economic status. Seasonal availability affects food safety. Fresh foods are safer when in season, but may be stored improperly during off-seasons. Preserved foods provide year-round nutrition, but carry risks from preservation methods. People eat seasonally not by choice but by necessity, accepting higher risks during certain times of year. Chapter 11. Roman Religion and Spiritual Life. Time for spiritual fulfillment in the Roman world, where religion has evolved from primitive god-placating into a sophisticated bureaucratic system that combines traditional mythology, imported mystery cults, and state-sponsored rituals into a complex web of spiritual obligations that consume enormous resources while providing questionable benefits. Roman religion is essentially a divine protection racket run by a pantheon of gods who each have specific areas of responsibility and personal vendettas against humanity. Jupiter controls the sky and weather, Mars handles war and agriculture, Venus manages love and beauty, and dozens of other deities oversee everything from sewers to childbirth. Each god requires specific rituals, offerings, and respect, creating a complex system of spiritual obligations. Religious practice is both personal and public. Individual households maintain shrines to household gods called lares and penates, who protect the home and family. These require daily offerings of food, wine, and incense. Public religion involves elaborate festivals, temple ceremonies, and community rituals that require participation from all citizens. The calendar is packed with religious festivals that consume enormous resources and require community participation. The Saturnalia reverses social roles for a week. Lupercalia involves naked priests running through the streets, and various harvest festivals require sacrifices of animals and crops. These celebrations are mandatory fun, enforced by social pressure and legal requirements. Temples are massive construction projects that require enormous resources and skilled labor. The Pantheon, Temple of Jupiter, and other religious buildings are architectural marvels that demonstrate Roman engineering skills. However, they're built with taxes extracted from people who can barely afford basic necessities, and construction workers often die building monuments to gods who seem perpetually unsatisfied. Priests are professional religious officials who maintain temples, perform rituals, and interpret divine will. The Pontifex Maximus is the chief priest who oversees religious law and practices. Priests are well paid and politically influential, but they're also responsible for complex rituals that can have deadly consequences if performed incorrectly. Animal sacrifice is central to Roman religion and involves killing massive numbers of animals for divine favor. Bulls, sheep, pigs, and birds are slaughtered in elaborate ceremonies that waste enormous amounts of food while people starve. The meat is sometimes distributed to the public, but much is burned as offerings to gods who apparently prefer their food well done. Divination and prophecy guide major decisions through interpretation of bird flights, animal entrails, and natural phenomena. Augurs and haruspices are specialists who read omens and predict the future. Military campaigns, political decisions, and personal choices are based on supernatural interpretations rather than rational analysis. Mystery religions offer exclusive spiritual experiences and promises of salvation through secret initiations. The Mithraic mysteries, Eleusinian mysteries, and other cults provide alternative spiritual paths for those who find traditional religion unsatisfying. These cults require expensive initiation fees and absolute secrecy about their practices. Imperial cult worship treats emperors as living gods who require worship and offerings. This combines religion with politics in ways that make spiritual dissent equivalent to treason. Citizens must participate in emperor worship regardless of their personal beliefs, creating conflicts between religious conscience and political loyalty. Death and afterlife beliefs are complex and varied. Traditional Roman religion offers little hope for pleasant afterlife experiences, with most souls going to a dreary underworld. Mystery religions promise better afterlife experiences for initiates, while philosophical schools offer different approaches to death and meaning. Religious law governs many aspects of daily life, including marriage, business practices, and social behavior. Priests interpret religious law and impose penalties for violations. Breaking religious law is both a spiritual offense and a civil crime that can result in fines, exile, or death. Foreign religions are sometimes tolerated, sometimes persecuted, depending on political circumstances. Judaism is generally accepted as an ancient and respectable religion, while Christianity is viewed with suspicion as a dangerous cult. Religious tolerance depends on political utility and social stability. Religious education involves learning proper rituals, understanding mythological stories, and memorizing prayers and ceremonies. Religious knowledge is passed down through families and formal instruction. Independent religious thinking is discouraged and religious innovation is potentially dangerous. Religious expenses consume significant portions of household budgets. Offerings, festival contributions, and religious fees are mandatory expenditures that compete with basic survival needs. Wealthy families can afford elaborate religious displays, while poor families struggle to meet minimum religious obligations. The gods provide explanations for natural phenomena and human suffering, but they extract high prices in terms of time, resources, and personal freedom. Religious practice offers community connections and psychological comfort, but it also creates additional sources of anxiety and financial burden. Religious hypocrisy is common among the wealthy and powerful, who use religious displays to demonstrate piety while ignoring religious ethics in their personal and business lives. Religious observance becomes a form of social performance rather than genuine spiritual practice. Chapter 12. Women in Classical Antiquity. If you thought being a man in the Roman world was challenging, try navigating it as a woman. All the same dangers, diseases, and social pressures, plus the added excitement of legal invisibility, systematic oppression, and the constant reality that your primary value lies in your reproductive capacity and domestic labor. Roman women have more legal rights and social freedom than women in previous eras, but this is relative improvement over complete powerlessness. Women can own property, conduct business, and participate in some aspects of public life. However, they remain under the legal authority of their fathers or husbands throughout their lives and cannot vote, hold public office, or represent themselves in legal proceedings. Marriage is still primarily an economic and political arrangement between families. Women have some input into marriage decisions, particularly if they're from wealthy families, but marriages are arranged for family benefit rather than personal choice. Divorce is possible but complicated, and women who initiate divorce face social stigma and economic hardship. Wealthy women can achieve significant informal power through their family connections and personal influence. They can host salons, patronize artists, and influence political decisions through their relationships with powerful men. Some women become influential behind the scenes, but their power is always derivative and vulnerable to changes in family circumstances. Childbirth remains dangerous, with maternal mortality rates that are catastrophic by modern standards. Roman medicine has improved obstetric care, but infection, hemorrhage, and complications still kill many women. Having children is both a social obligation and a life-threatening activity that women must repeat throughout their fertile years. Women's work is extensive and undervalued. They manage households, supervise servants, oversee food production, and handle family finances. Upper-class women may have leisure time, but they're expected to spend it on appropriate activities like weaving, music, or religious observance. Lower-class women work in shops, markets, and domestic service. Education for women is limited but available to wealthy families. Some women learn to read and write, study literature and philosophy, and participate in intellectual life. However, formal education is primarily reserved for men, and women's intellectual capabilities are considered naturally inferior. Legal protection for women is minimal and depends on their social class and family connections. Rape is a serious crime, but prosecution is difficult and conviction requires substantial evidence. Domestic violence is legal within limits, and women have limited recourse against abusive husbands. Legal proceedings are conducted by men, and women's testimony is often given less weight than men's. Economic opportunities for women are limited but exist. Women can own businesses, inherit property, and engage in trade. However, they face discrimination in business dealings and may need male representatives for major transactions. Economic independence is possible but difficult to achieve and maintain. Religious roles offer some opportunities for women to achieve status and influence. Women can serve as priestesses for female deities, participate in religious festivals, and maintain household shrines. Some religious positions provide economic independence and social respect, but they're always within limits set by male religious authorities. Women's sexuality is strictly controlled and regulated. Adultery is a serious crime for women but not for men. Women are expected to be chaste before marriage and faithful afterward. Sexual behavior is monitored by family and community, and violations can result in severe social and legal consequences. Fashion and appearance are important indicators of social status and personal virtue. Women are expected to dress appropriately for their social class and marital status. Elaborate hairstyles, jewelry, and clothing display family wealth and social position. However, excessive attention to appearance can be criticized as vanity or moral corruption. Healthcare for women is limited and often dangerous. Medical understanding of female anatomy is minimal and often wrong. Treatments for women's health problems are based on male theories about female inferiority and supernatural causes. Women are expected to endure pain and illness as natural consequences of their gender. Widowhood can provide some freedom from male authority, but it also creates economic vulnerability. Widows may inherit property and conduct business independently, but they're also targets for exploitation and fraud. Remarriage is often necessary for economic security, but it means returning to subordinate status under a new husband. Women's friendships and social networks provide support and companionship within the constraints of their social roles. Women gather for religious festivals, social events, and mutual support during childbirth and family crises. These networks provide emotional support and practical assistance within the limits of their social positions. The few women who achieve lasting fame and influence do so through exceptional circumstances, royal birth, religious calling, or literary talent that cannot be ignored. But even successful women face constant challenges to their legitimacy and operate within systems designed to limit their power and autonomy. Chapter 13. Roman Law and Justice. Welcome to Roman justice, where the legal system has evolved from primitive might makes right into a sophisticated framework of written laws, legal procedures, and professional advocates that provides genuine improvements in fairness and consistency while still managing to be brutal, classist, and terrifying for anyone who isn't wealthy and well-connected. Roman law is based on written codes that provide consistent standards for legal proceedings. The 12 tables, various imperial edicts, and accumulated legal precedents create a comprehensive system that covers property rights, contracts, family law, and criminal justice. This is a massive improvement over arbitrary decisions by local strongmen, but the laws explicitly recognize social classes and prescribe different treatments for different people. Legal procedures are formal and sophisticated. Courts follow established rules of evidence. Defendants have rights to legal representation, and judges must justify their decisions according to legal principles. This sounds civilized until you realize that legal representation is expensive, evidence standards favor the wealthy, and judges are appointed by political authorities who expect favorable decisions. The legal profession has developed into a specialized field with trained advocates, judges, and legal scholars. Lawyers study legal theory, practice rhetorical skills, and understand complex legal procedures. Legal education is formal and comprehensive, producing professionals who actually understand the law. However, legal services are expensive and primarily available to the wealthy. Criminal justice distinguishes between different types of crimes and provides graduated punishments. Murder, theft, fraud, and other crimes are defined clearly and carry specific penalties. This provides predictability and consistency in criminal justice, but punishments are still brutal and often involve torture, mutilation, or execution. Civil law governs disputes between private parties and provides mechanisms for resolving conflicts without violence. Property disputes, contract violations, and family disagreements can be resolved through legal proceedings rather than private warfare. This is a major advance in civilized dispute resolution, but access to civil courts is limited by cost and social status. Trial procedures are elaborate and theatrical. Lawyers present evidence, call witnesses, and make rhetorical arguments to judges or juries. Trials are public events that combine legal proceedings with entertainment. This provides transparency and accountability, but it also turns justice into a performance where success depends on rhetorical skill rather than factual accuracy. Social class determines legal treatment in explicit and systematic ways. Citizens have more rights than non-citizens, free people have more rights than slaves, and wealthy people have more rights than poor people. The same crime carries different punishments depending on the social status of the perpetrator and victim. Justice is not blind, it's completely focused on maintaining social hierarchies. Torture is a standard part of criminal investigation and punishment. Slaves and lower-class defendants are routinely tortured to extract confessions, and torture is used as punishment for various crimes. The wealthy can usually avoid torture through legal technicalities or social connections, but torture is an accepted part of the justice system. Capital punishment is prescribed for numerous crimes and carried out through various methods designed to provide public spectacle and deterrence. Crucifixion, burning, feeding to wild animals, and other execution methods are used to entertain crowds while disposing of criminals. Public executions are popular entertainment that combines justice with recreation. Prison is rarely used as punishment because it's expensive to maintain prisoners. Most criminals are punished immediately through physical means, executed or enslaved. Prisons exist mainly for holding accused individuals awaiting trial or execution. The concept of rehabilitation through imprisonment is unknown. Slavery is legal and central to the economic system. Slaves have no legal rights and can be bought, sold, tortured, or killed at their owner's discretion. Children can be born into slavery, and free people can be enslaved for debt or as punishment for crimes. Slavery is considered a normal and necessary part of social organization. Legal appeals are possible but limited. Higher courts can review decisions, but appeals are expensive and time-consuming. The wealthy can afford to pursue appeals through multiple court levels, while the poor must accept initial decisions. Legal appeals provide some protection against arbitrary decisions, but they're not equally available to all defendants. International law governs relations between different communities and provides frameworks for treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic relations. Roman law influences legal systems throughout the empire and establishes standards for legal practice. However, international law is enforced through military power rather than mutual agreement. Legal rights vary significantly depending on citizenship status, social class, and gender. Male citizens have full legal rights, while women, slaves, and non-citizens have limited rights or no rights at all. Legal protection depends on social position and political connections rather than universal principles of justice. Professional legal services are available to those who can afford them, but legal representation is expensive and not guaranteed. Wealthy defendants can hire skilled lawyers and pursue extensive legal strategies, while poor defendants rely on overworked public advocates or represent themselves. The legal system provides genuine improvements in fairness and consistency compared to previous eras, but it's still designed to protect the interests of the wealthy and powerful. Justice is available to those who can afford it, while the poor and powerless remain vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. Chapter 14. Death and Disease in the Golden Age. Time to explore the Roman Empire's impressive catalogue of ways to die, which has expanded dramatically from previous eras thanks to urbanization, global trade networks, and improved technology that's made killing more efficient while keeping healing only marginally less dangerous than the diseases it's supposed to treat. Urban diseases have reached new heights of creativity and lethality thanks to population density that would make modern city planners weep. Rome itself has over 1 million residents crammed into insulae that are basically ancient death traps. When disease breaks out, it spreads through crowded neighborhoods like wildfire through dry kindling, killing thousands before anyone understands what's happening. The Antonine Plague, possibly smallpox or measles, kills an estimated 5 million people across the empire between 165 to 180 CE. This epidemic demonstrates how global trade networks can spread disease as efficiently as they spread goods. Merchants, soldiers, and travelers carry diseases to populations that have no immunity, creating massive die-offs that destabilize entire regions. Malaria remains a major killer, especially in areas with poor drainage and standing water. Roman engineering creates aqueducts and sewers, but it also creates new breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Urban water systems, while generally safer than natural sources, can become contaminated and spread disease to large populations quickly. Tuberculosis thrives in crowded urban conditions where people live in close quarters with poor ventilation. The disease spreads through airborne droplets and slowly destroys victims' lungs over months or years. Entire families are wiped out, and the disease spreads through apartment buildings and neighborhoods with devastating efficiency. Gastrointestinal diseases are universal due to food contamination and poor sanitation. Even with improved water systems, cholera, dysentery, and typhoid fever spread through contaminated food and water. These diseases can kill within days or drag on for weeks, causing severe suffering before death or recovery. Lead poisoning is endemic among the wealthy due to lead pipes in water systems, lead-lined cooking vessels, and lead compounds added to wine. This chronic poisoning causes neurological damage, infertility, and premature death. The wealthy suffer from a form of poisoning that's directly caused by their access to improved technology. Occupational diseases are common and accepted as normal parts of working life. Miners develop lung diseases from inhaling dust and toxic fumes. Metal workers suffer from heavy metal poisoning. Gladiators die from combat injuries, infections, and the long-term effects of repeated trauma. Occupational hazards are considered unavoidable rather than preventable. Childbirth and infant mortality remain catastrophically high despite medical advances. Roman medicine has improved obstetric care, but infection, hemorrhage, and complications still kill many women and children. Families expect to lose multiple children, and women face repeated life-threatening pregnancies throughout their fertile years. Military medicine has advanced significantly, but soldiers still die from infected wounds, epidemic diseases in military camps, and the long-term effects of combat trauma. Military hospitals provide organized medical care, but they're overwhelmed during major campaigns and epidemics. Malnutrition affects even wealthy populations due to limited understanding of nutrition and seasonal food availability. Vitamin deficiencies cause scurvy, rickets, and night blindness. Protein deficiency stunts growth and weakens immune systems. Even people with access to food may suffer from nutritional deficiencies that make them vulnerable to disease. Mental illness is better understood than in previous eras, but treatment is still primitive and often harmful. Depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress from warfare are recognized as medical conditions, but treatments include bloodletting, purging, and various procedures that often make conditions worse. Epidemic diseases can wipe out significant portions of the population. The plague of Cyprian, possibly smallpox or measles, kills millions in the 3rd century CE. These epidemics disrupt trade, agriculture, and government, creating cascading effects that kill more people through starvation and social collapse than the diseases themselves. Surgical procedures are more advanced but still dangerous. Roman surgeons can perform cataract removal, amputations, and other complex procedures, but infection rates are high and pain management is primitive. Surgery is often a last resort because survival rates are poor and recovery is prolonged and painful. Parasitic infections are universal and accepted as normal. Everyone has intestinal worms, and many people have liver flukes, blood flukes, and other parasites that cause chronic health problems. Some parasites cause severe anemia, organ damage, and neurological problems that can be fatal. Natural disasters can kill thousands and leave survivors vulnerable to disease and starvation. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE destroys Pompeii and Herculaneum, preserving them for archaeology but killing everyone who lived there. Earthquakes, floods, and other disasters destroy infrastructure and create conditions for epidemic disease. Violence and warfare are constant threats. Gladiatorial games, public executions, and military campaigns create a culture where violent death is entertainment. Civilian populations face death from banditry, military occupation, and the collapse of law and order during political instability. Life expectancy varies dramatically by social class and occupation. Wealthy Romans might live into their 50s or 60s, while slaves and urban poor often die in their 20s or 30s. Gladiators have life expectancies measured in months, while miners and other dangerous occupations kill workers within years rather than decades. The randomness of death is perhaps most psychologically devastating. Families are routinely destroyed by disease, accidents, or violence. Even wealthy families with access to the best medical care lose children to disease and women to childbirth. Death is so common that people develop elaborate rituals and philosophical systems to cope with constant loss. Suicide becomes more common and socially acceptable as life becomes more complex and stressful. Roman philosophy includes discussions of when suicide is appropriate, and many prominent Romans choose death over dishonor, slavery, or unbearable suffering. Suicide methods include poison, blade wounds, and deliberately provoking fatal conflicts. Medical treatment can be as dangerous as the diseases it's supposed to cure. Bloodletting, purging, and various surgical procedures often weaken patients and cause infections. Many people avoid medical treatment because the cure is often worse than the disease. Medical knowledge has advanced, but medical practice is still primitive and dangerous. The wealthy have access to better medical care, nutrition, and living conditions, but they're not immune to disease and death. Lead poisoning actually affects the wealthy more than the poor because they have access to lead pipes and lead-enhanced wine. Wealth provides some protection, but it also creates new health risks. Roman achievements in public health, medicine, and urban planning represent genuine advances in human welfare, but they coexist with disease, violence, and early death that remain constant threats. The empire's size and complexity create new opportunities for both human flourishing and human suffering. Chapter 15. The Classical Reality Check. So there you have it, life in classical antiquity, where humanity achieved unprecedented heights of art, literature, philosophy, and engineering, while simultaneously perfecting the art of systematic oppression, institutionalized violence, and creative ways to make daily existence miserable for the vast majority of the population. This was supposed to be the golden age of civilization, and in many ways it was, but the gold was built on a foundation of blood, slavery, and human suffering that makes previous eras look like practice runs. The classical world gave us democracy, but it was democracy for adult male citizens who owned property while everyone else, women, slaves, foreigners, and the poor, had no voice in government. It gave us philosophy and rational thinking, but these coexisted with superstition, religious extremism, and brutal entertainment that treated human death as a amusing spectacle. The technological and cultural achievements were real and extraordinary. Roman engineering created aqueducts, roads, and buildings that lasted for centuries. Greek philosophy established rational inquiry and logical thinking. Roman law created legal systems that influenced civilization for millennia. Art, literature, and architecture reached heights that wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years. But these achievements were built by people who lived in conditions that would be considered unacceptable today. The beautiful buildings were constructed by slaves who died during construction. The philosophical schools were supported by economies based on human bondage. The legal systems that protected citizens' rights explicitly excluded most of the population from citizenship. Social stratification was extreme and systematic. The wealthy lived in luxury that rivaled modern standards, with running water, central heating, elaborate cuisine, and access to global trade goods. The poor lived in overcrowded, dangerous tenements, worked in deadly occupations, and faced constant threats from disease, violence, and starvation. The scale of human suffering was enormous, Slavery was central to the economy, with millions of people treated as property. Gladiatorial games and public executions turned human death into entertainment. Military campaigns involved genocide, mass enslavement, and the systematic destruction of entire cultures. The empire was built on violence and maintained through terror. Yet somehow, despite all the suffering and brutality, people continued to create, innovate, and dream. They wrote poetry, developed scientific theories, created art, and built communities. They fell in love, raised families, and found meaning in their lives despite living in systems designed to exploit and oppress them. The classical world developed concepts of human dignity, individual rights, and rational governance that would eventually lead to modern concepts of human rights and democracy. But these ideas coexisted with practices that completely contradicted them. The same people who wrote about natural law and human dignity owned slaves and watched gladiators die for entertainment. What's remarkable is not that classical people suffered. Suffering was universal and expected. What's remarkable is that they created enduring works of art, literature, and philosophy that continue to inspire and influence people today. They developed technologies, legal systems, and governmental structures that became the foundation of Western civilization. The classical world ended not because people gave up trying to improve their lives, but because the systems they created became unsustainable. The Roman Empire grew too large to govern effectively, the economy became dependent on conquest and slavery, and the social contradictions between stated ideals and actual practices created internal tensions that eventually tore the system apart. But the ideas and innovations survived. Roman law influenced legal systems throughout Europe and beyond. Greek philosophy became the foundation of Western intellectual tradition. Roman engineering techniques were used to build cities and infrastructure for centuries. The classical world's greatest achievement was not its buildings or its military conquests, but its ideas about human potential and rational governance. We stand on the shoulders of classical giants who were brilliant enough to create democracy and philosophy while simultaneously practicing slavery and systematic oppression. Every concept of human rights, individual dignity, and rational governance that we take for granted exists because classical thinkers developed these ideas despite living in societies that contradicted them. They couldn't imagine our world of universal human rights, democratic governments, and social safety nets. But they made it possible by developing the intellectual foundations that would eventually lead to these improvements. They created the concepts that would eventually be used to criticize and reform the systems they built. And maybe that's what we're doing too. Future humans might look back at our time and wonder how we survived such primitive conditions. No interstellar travel, no artificial intelligence companions, no genetic engineering to eliminate disease and aging. They might read about our lives and think, how did they stand it? Climate change, nuclear weapons, social inequality, and Twitter. What a nightmare. But like our classical ancestors, we keep trying to make things better. We keep believing that human reason can solve problems and that tomorrow might be an improvement over today. We keep working toward ideals that we haven't achieved yet, just as they did. The classical world taught us that human beings are capable of extraordinary achievements and terrible cruelties, often simultaneously. They showed us that civilization is not a destination but a process, not a solved problem but an ongoing project. They demonstrated that progress is possible but not inevitable, that human dignity is an ideal worth pursuing even when it seems impossible to achieve. So here's to classical antiquity, humanity's first attempt at large-scale civilization, written in marble and blood, philosophy and slavery, rational thought and brutal entertainment. They built the foundations of the modern world while living in conditions that would horrify us today. They created concepts of human dignity while practicing systematic oppression. They developed ideas about justice while maintaining systems of exploitation. They did it not because they were heroes or villains, but because they were human beings trying to make sense of existence and create meaning in a universe that seemed indifferent to their suffering. They succeeded and failed, often simultaneously, but they kept trying. And you know what? That's what made them great. Not their perfection, but their persistence. Not their achievement, of ideal justice, but their creation of the concepts that would eventually lead to better justice. Not their elimination of human suffering, but their development of ideas that would eventually be used to reduce suffering. The classical world ended, but the ideas survived. And those ideas, tested and refined over centuries, eventually led to the imperfect but improving world we live in today. The end. Sleep well, knowing that your classical ancestors survived plagues, slavery, and gladiatorial combat so that you could have the luxury of complaining about traffic jams and arguing about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. They built the intellectual foundations of civilization so you wouldn't have to reinvent democracy, philosophy, and the concept of human rights from scratch.